Let's talk about something that probably none of us know anything about. The ego. Now, do we really understand our ego? I mean, seriously. How does our ego manifest? And how do we know if we have ego? Now, let's understand. If we're alive, for sure we have ego. Okay? Because there's only one thing that doesn't have ego, and that is death. When we're dead, we don't have any ego. But we're alive, thank God, and we do have an ego. And how do we know that? Because when the baby comes out of his mother's womb, he comes out like this, with his fists closed. And we know, the Kabbalists say, this is an indication of what we call the desire for the self. The selfish desire that is innate within all of us, and it's normal, and it's our fuel, and it's it's a positive force of desire that exists within us. But it gets out of hand. So we need to know what to do with it. And since this week we can draw down the energy of humility, which helps us use our ego, and that's the interesting thing about humility. To have true humility, you need to have an ego first. Because humility doesn't mean a person who says, oh, I'm nothing, I'm a nobody, and I can't do anything. Because that person is simply not going to accomplish anything, not for themselves and not for anyone else, and not for the world. You can't be a nobody and do everything. And our greatest example is Moses. Because Moses, as our teacher, Rav Berg, always used to say, what's written in the Torah is what Moses said. Moses was the most humble man that ever walked the earth. And who wrote that? Moses, of course. So how humble could Moses be if he wrote about himself that he was the most humble man that ever walked the earth? And the answer is, Moses already had reached the state where, he left his body. He was in the framework which we call da'at. And that's already above the physical world. So, and therefore we understand Moses was already half angel, half man. And he could write about himself that Moses was the most humble man that ever walked the earth because he was absolutely objective, as though he was watching someone named Moses and saying, yeah, that person is the most humble man. But not himself. But it was himself. But that's where he was. That's where he was. So we're not there. But this is the inspiration that we have for this week to attach to real humility. Because again, Moses, the leader of the nation, had to have the most ego and also had to restrict the most ego to be able to encompass that kind of power of a true leader and to be able to receive, to be a pure channel of the creator of the universe, to be able to receive all the answers at any given time, to be able to lead a nation, to be able to do it all, to be able to write a Bible, as it says, in the hand of Moses, but from the mouth of God, meaning that Moses simply received all of it as a pure, unadulterated channel. Now, all of us channel stuff. We all do. When someone needs our help, suddenly, if we really have a true desire to help somebody, well, we'll channel stuff, we'll say stuff, we'll do stuff that's not usually us. Someone was telling me, in fact, 2 days ago, how someone was in trouble and whatever it was, someone fainted, and they had to lift, and this was a woman, had to lift them up on a couch or on a stretcher. Not strong enough to do that necessarily, but all of a sudden a channel came and she was able to do that. Sometimes we say things, we don't even know who's talking, and we'll say afterwards, oh my God, who said that? Well, that's when we are put in a position of channeling something. Generally is when we have to give something of ourselves, and it's on short notice, because if we have a lot of time to think about it, or we've become accustomed to doing it, it's easy that it can come from our ego. And that's why usually the beginner's fright or stage fright or beginner's luck. I mean, there's no such thing as luck. We know there is connection, but a beginner has the greatest chance of connection because they don't really have ego about it yet. They're a little anticipating, they don't know, there's uncertainty involved, but when you decide to do this thing, if it's challenging, if it's difficult, even rolling a dice or playing a game or something for the first time, you have that infusion of the keter, you have that infusion of an uninterrupted flow of some sort, big or small. So we want that. I mean, I don't know anybody who, I want more of that. I don't know about you, but I certainly want more of that. And this is a week we can draw down that kind of energy. Practically speaking, though, there are some things we need to do. At least we need to make the effort. Now, there are certain signs of ego. Number one, sure sign of ego is we allow other things or people to upset us. That's right. According to the Zohar, anger is one of not only the surefire signs of ego, but one of the greatest ones. In fact, so much so that the Zohar says anger, when a person is really angry, it's a form of idol worship. And you shouldn't even be around that person. You shouldn't even look at their face at that time, because the pure soul leaves and something foreign comes in for that time. And not only that, that everything the person has created up until that point sort of falls apart. You know, it's like a house of cards. We work really hard at building it, and then a real anger comes and the whole thing falls apart, and in some sense we need to start all over again. So we don't want that. We want to try to avoid those kinds of pitfalls. So anger is one. Another huge one is getting insulted. That's right. If you've ever been insulted, and you know, I've coined insult in my life, because I remember in the beginning of my spiritual journey, I don't necessarily consider myself so spiritual, practical, but in the beginning of my journey and learning with the Rav and Karen, I had the blessing and the good fortune to be around the Rav and Karen quite a lot, especially in the early days. And I'm talking back in 1987, 1988. And I remember, you know, the Rav would ask certain things. And, you know, in my background, I mean, I wasn't accustomed to being asked what to do. I grew up kind of a spoiled child, and more with my mother, less with my father, sort of thing. And again, my mother just didn't ask a lot of me. You know, she kind of took me everywhere, and I went shopping with her, and I did all kinds of things, and so asked very little of me. Well, the Rav would ask things of me. And sometimes the Rav would say something to help awaken me, shall we say, and I would get hugely insulted. And the Rav would kind of joke to me, actually to Karen, in a loving way, of course. And the Rav used to say, "Honey, I think Abe is insulted again." And of course, there was a certain amount of flattery, but there was a certain amount of pain that went with that pushed me. And the Rav was very wise, of course, to be able to say those sorts of things, and knew that saying them would awaken my ego, but the desire to change for my ego's sake. So that's the way the Rav used my ego to help me overcome being insulted, because who wants to go around being insulted? Who wants, in fact, the Rav to say to Karen, "Oh, Abe is insulted again"? So, of course, the goal was to not allow myself to go to that place. Well, It's a process. In fact, I'm still in that process almost 30 years later. Of course, I'm happy to say it's better, but of course, it's a constant work. But what I came to understand is also a source of light for me personally, because I had a personal issue. I mean, I'm Aries rising and I'm Aries moon, and even though I'm a Taurus Gemini, I got that thing. And Aries, character of Aries, moon in Aries, reactive consciousness of an Aries is very easily insulted. So being insulted by what other people say is one level. Being insulted by what the universe provides for us, okay? So it's not only other people with what they say, sometimes what they do, insulted by others' actions, but also insulted by circumstances. Case in point, let's say someone goes through a difficult business challenge and they say to themselves, how could the universe, again, even spiritually, how could the universe, how could God, how could this happen to me? Now, if we count, how many times we've ever asked that, how could this happen to me? What we're really saying is, it shouldn't. This shouldn't happen. I deserve better, and this shouldn't happen. That's the ego at work, okay? That's the ego at work. So what is our job? And I'll give you some pointers that I've learned along the way, the spiritual pointers. I'll give you the ideal, and I'll, hopefully, and I'm hopeful that this will help any of you who might happen to have that type of issue. I don't know, again, if it's being insulted, if it's getting angry, if it's being jealous. By the way, every negative emotion has its root in our own ego trip. Being too possessive over our children or too controlling, also, by the way. And I try to remember to explain how that plays out. Let me tell you now, because the Rav used to say something very deep but very profound as well. If you don't love other people's children the way you love your own children, now that's an ideal, please. If you don't love other people's children the way you love your own children, you're on an ego trip. Why? I mean, shouldn't you love your children? Of course you should. But ideally, spiritually, if we had no ego about our children, because they're ours, we'd also love other children equally to our own. But since our children, we think, belong to us, they're my kids, and what they do or don't do is somehow a reflection on you know who, well, that's an ego trip, okay? So to be a truly spiritual person, we would really need to understand and first let go of our kids being our kids, to be objective about them and think about them like we would think of other kids, what's good for them, what's not good for them. Again, because we can be completely jaded and not objective about our own kids because we have agendas about them. We hope they won't judge us. We want them to love us. And if giving them too much or not giving them enough, might be an issue, an imbalance. Why? Because we have ego within ourselves about our own children. When we don't understand that we're given these souls to take care of, and they are merely the tools or the vehicle for us as parent, whoever is a parent, to do your spiritual work. Your spiritual work hasn't begun until you got married and have children. And the Zohar says, you should have a boy and a girl. Each one is going to provide another level of your tikun and mine. So this is what it's about. But we need to understand that. It's an ego trip. So we have so many ego trips. Let's go back to getting insulted. How do you handle it? Someone says something to you, and it happened to me, not too long ago, less than a week ago, that someone begins to tell you about things that are wrong with you and things that are not okay with you. And of course, even though logically none of us think we're perfect, but We don't necessarily want people telling us that we're not perfect. And by the way, this is already preparation for the month of Virgo, which is the month of cleansing, where we should already begin to think of who we're going to go to and ask to give me a list of everything that is wrong with me, because I want to be able to have a chance to work on it, to cleanse it, to help purify it before Rosh Hashanah, new cosmic new year, new destiny. And the more we cleanse out in the month of Virgo, the better off we are for the entire year. So, how should we deal with insult? How should we deal? I mean, whether we're actually being insulted or whether we are taking something personally makes no difference. It's the same. It's the same. First step is this. Open arms. Open arms. That's right. Even though we don't need to do this, when the insult comes, we should gather it and take it in. That's right. We should, in that moment, accept it 100%. It'll feel like a fire initially, like a burning fire. Now, the Zohar says that fire is the fire of judgment. But you should never forget, judgment is a holy force. We know in Kabbalah there are 5 judgments and 5 mercies, and they are equally holy. And something is not called beautiful or whole or complete, which we call tiferet. It's not complete without a balance of mercy, the chasadim, the level of mercy, and the level of judgment equally. There must be both. Too much mercy is impure and not beautiful. Too much judgment is ugly as well. There has to be an equal force of both. Now, what that means is that's also what balances us. Judgment pushes us, judgment cleanses us, judgment can motivate us, or of course it can bring us down. Now that depends on our own spiritual consciousness of where we want to go with it. So that's the time to awaken our desire and to ask ourselves the question, where do I want to go with this? What do I want this to provide me with? This is the light's calling card to give me an opportunity to create a new and pure vessel for myself to go higher, to reach my next level. This insult, in fact, there's stories of the great Kabbalists who used to wait for moments like this. Wait for moments like this. And I remember the story of 2 Kabbalists going into the study hall, and there was someone waiting outside the study hall for one of the Kabbalists. And just as they entered, this man waiting out there would call him every name in the book and curse him and you know, whatever it is. He would call him and insult him in every way. And when they would get into the study hall, one would tell the other, where did you find? Where did you get the blessing to find someone like that? He says, well, I have the merit that he does this to me every single day before I go into the hall to study. He says, you are so blessed. You are so fortunate. And this should be a lesson to us. We should remember this idea because it's a rule. Whenever a new light is about to be revealed, the universe will likely send someone to hurt us, to insult us, or to cause us some kind of pain that we need to rise to the occasion. Because it's there to earn, it's there to purify, it's there to help me move to the next level. But if I fall into it and I react to it and say, well, what do you think? Who do you think you're talking to? You're talking to me. Really? Who are you? Who am I? We're only a vessel that needs to be purified, and the light is doing us a favor and trying to help us. So that's what the meaning of open arms is. Accepting it. Which means first step, and I don't say it's the only step, but first step is to take it in and accept it with a full heart, with open arms. Now, here's a question. Sometimes it should stop there. But sometimes, let's say a relationship is abusive. What do you do then? Does that mean turn the other cheek and just allow people to abuse you? And the answer is no, of course not. So what does this look like? First step, we need to open our arms, take it in, and accept it. Next step, we need to decide how to respond. Is this something I should fight for? Which means if an abusive situation, there's nowhere that it says that one shouldn't defend themselves. So we should defend ourselves, from abuse. That's true. But the only way to truly defend ourselves or to have a real answer, because in general rule, we shouldn't answer back. We should first be quiet and wait. We should wait even a couple of days before we even decide, is this something I need to address? If we decide that it does need to address, we need to come from a place of first we accepted it in. We want to find the truth, find what there is for me in this exchange, in this purification. And the only way we'll do that is first we accept it and we take it in and we feel the fire first. Then, and only then, we can respond. And as I say, better after 2 to 3 days, because then we're out of the reactive mode, or we should be out of the reactive mode. Because if we react to it and defend ourselves from a reactive place, it'll only get worse. You won't make it better. In fact, since you're reactive to it and it's your test, you fail the test, and things just get worse. Sure, it gives you another opportunity, but it's even more difficult then. So again, insult, and this works also with insult from the universe that we take. How could this happen to me? This is a bad decision. I lost something now. Money, a relationship, they dumped me. What? This is also, again, so many ways we get the business from the universe, and that's what we call it, getting the business. So when we get the business, we need to remember one thing. Step 1, open arms, take it in, accept it, feel the pain, feel the burn. Just look at it as working out. When you weight lift, that's what they say. You gotta feel the burn. Of course, that's great when you're lifting weights and you want to build your muscles. Well, we want to build our spiritual muscles, and that's the way to do it. It's the same exact process. Feel the burn. Feel the burn. Feel the burn. Feel the burn means I'm cleansing and I'm earning. That's what that burn means. I'm cleansing, purifying, and I'm earning my light, and I'm creating my vessel. The light wants to move me on to the next step. That's what we got to do. If I think it needs to be addressed, wait at least 3 days. Wait 3 days. Reevaluate it and decide, is this something I need to address? Is it abusive? Is it against the cosmic? Is it against the light? Or is it just me personally? Me personally, I need to examine it. Is it abusive? I need to address it. One way or the other. But again, only after I've accepted it, I've looked for the truth, I've looked for where is it, what is it that they're really trying to tell me, I've taken it in, now I'm proactive in my response. I'm not coming from a reactive place. And that's what we want. And this week, the cosmic is ripe to give us all the energy of humility, because the ability to act this way only comes from humility. Anger is the first sign, no humility. We're dealing with pride and ego here. So we want to get as much of that humility, and that's one of the ways we work on it, because the burn is also burning out the negative part of my ego. Doesn't get rid of it. Remember, we don't want to get rid of it. We want to use our ego. We want to use it to build us. We want to use it to take us places. We want to use the desire that it has to offer, as the Zohar says, to saddle our ego and ride it to the moon. Ride it like a donkey. That's what the Zohar says. So all the best to all of us, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.